It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. Hello, Amsterdam, always a beautiful city. Really happy to be here. So, I'm at the United Nations and at unvr.org. Did any of you know that the UN does virtual reality? Who knew? Good, good. But yes, we do virtual reality. We have an app with some incredible experiences that you could download for iOS, Android, Oculus, and soon to be on the Google Daydream platform. So I just wanted to kind of tell you a little bit about what our program was, but really the emphasis of the talk is going to be very simple. I'm also a director and producer of VR content, and I made Clouds Over Sidra, which is one of the first virtual reality documentaries to kind of be made. It was filmed in December of 2014 when I went to Zaatari refugee camp, to Syrian refugee camp in Jordan. When I went and I had the possibility to use virtual reality, a lot of people said, this is incredible, just show people what is going on in these refugee camps. And when I had to take the camera and work with people, I had to really think about what our approach would be with this new technology and how it would effectively try to represent the pain of others, which is really what this topic is about. Representing the pain of others, is really what I thought a lot of our work was trying to do. And in order to do that, I just felt there was something missing because everyone kept saying, show the suffering because virtual reality is so powerful. And I thought to myself, is that true? If you just show people suffering, is that going to be enough to stop suffering? Well, the quick answer is no. It is not enough just to show the suffering of others. And it's not just with virtual reality. It's with just the history of visual media that I think has shown that that's usually not the best approach. So, to start off with, when we were doing it, we've been trying to tell stories from a long time, and there's always been this element of abstraction, even from cave paintings, where we always look inward to understand what's happening outside of our world, and to tell stories, and to do that. And, with virtual reality, when we wanted to start it at the UN, a lot of people were thinking, one, I was crazy to try to bring this in, because they just thought it's in a headset, and how is that real? How is this going to lead to human connection? And, if you look at it, I actually think the cave is the original virtual reality headset. I really do think that's the first time, we always look into these sort of images to understand what's happening. But before I went with, to Zaatari, to the camp, I just tried to do a little bit of research on how a lot of visual media was trying to represent, whether it was a refugee crisis, war, conflict, pain, in a lot of ways. This is from the Napoleonic era, and this is considered war painting peak. It really is around this time that we get an unprecedented amount of representations of war, and it's one of the theories of why that is because it's the first time that kings are not going into battles and generals are going, and they need more information about what's happening. Soon after, in the late 1800s, you have photography slowly, very, very slowly come into the scene. This is one of the first photographs from the American Civil War, which is a very kind of meta photograph, which is trying to show the battlefield is actually in the distance. And these are politicians and civilians and other people trying to understand, trying to go into the center of the action. So it's really just trying to show that we've always had this desire, and with visual media that's more lifelike, like the photograph, we're starting to go in and we're starting to see if that can change our relationship with others and with violence itself. Now, you can really say that World War I was when photography really was the dominant medium and really took over for the first time and tried to explain to people who weren't there what was happening in war. Vietnam is considered the first sort of televised war where you have, television images that are bringing sort of war into your home and trying to get you to understand what's happening. Syria, for many, would be considered the first YouTubed war where you have user-generated content of people using their cell phones. And if you go on YouTube, and you shouldn't do this, but you could probably find horrible things that are on there. And it's, again, the same sort of hope that if you see it, you'll be horrified and things will change. Black Lives Matter was the first sort of like live feed of someone getting killed and something happening. And again, the same sort of thing. So with virtual reality, it's only a matter of time where that's going to be a way that we're going to have to deal with war, with conflict, with, again, the pain of others. So this is, I don't know where I'm pointing. Okay. This is from World War I. This is War Against War is this book. It came out in the late 20s, and by 1930, it was in 10 editions in Germany and one of the bestsellers around the world. And it basically took 40 of like the worst pictures of World War I and said, look at how horrible war is. And, it really didn't do what it intended to do, which was to stop war and to get people to care. And so it was, again, that intuition that if we just show horrible things, in some ways, it will stop. But it didn't. Same thing with Vietnam. Sorry. Let me see if I can go back. Yeah. Let's see if this now will play. No, yeah, there we go. Same thing with Vietnam. Again, the intuition was, let's just show a lot of horrible things happening and it will make it stop. It doesn't necessarily do that. And this is some YouTube footage from Syria. I won't play all of it because some of it is graphic. But I talked to a lot of Syrian activists and a lot of white helmets, and it's the same thing. If only the whole world can see these things, things will stop. But it's not stopping, right? So why is that? There's a couple of reasons. And I think one of the best books that kind of helped me think about some of this was Susan Sontag's Regarding the Pain of Others. One, we grow numb to a lot of these images when you see them, because what feels shocking in some ways, after a while, we all live in now a sea of images that come through us that don't really do the same effect. This might motivate you the first time, but does it really keep the empathy, keep you coming and engaging with it? Just to give you a sense, even with UNICEF, when we were, in the past, there was a very different way of how we would also use shocking images, because that was just the intuition. Show shocking images, and it's going to cause people to care. Now, it works for a little bit, but then it stops, right? So that even now, when you watch something like this you see something like this that was official, it kind of makes you cringe that this is something that was accepted and this is something that was done. This is actually a very, it's kind of a joke. I don't know if you know Sally Struthers. This was the dominant way in the 80s and the early 90s was, maybe you could put the audio? I don't know how that works. Audio. I'd love audio if it's possible. Is there audio? Maybe it's mine. Let me see. We can start it again. Nope. Yep.
10 million third world children don't live to see their third birthday. Those who do live beyond that ripe old age here will grow up in dung heaps like this. Happy birthday. I've been asked if I've ever gotten used to this misery. How does a human being with a heart get used to this? The heartbreaking crying of a 2-year-old so undernourished her teeth are coming loose. The sight of a child so starved he's too weak to cry. And one so dehydrated by diarrhea he doesn't even have the tears to cry with. No, I can't get used to this any more than you could, but we can get rid of it. Yes, we can. You and I and CCF. Your 70 cents will put life-giving medicine into a dying little body, nourishing food into a little stomach, education into an impoverished little mind. Can you think of a better reason to call CCF right now than the chance to give some child the best birthday gift of all? A life of many, many more birthdays. Are you coming?
So, I don't know about you, but that's just like, that was normal. And now it's cringeworthy. I hope it's cringeworthy. I mean, I don't know how you feel about it. And even South Park has made fun of Sally Struthers. We shouldn't make fun of her. I mean, you know, but it really goes to show that our intuition always is show horrible things, get people to care. But it doesn't work. And so with UNICEF even, we've changed our approach because, again, that was the initial thing when we had photographs. You had the Audrey Hepburn sort of horrible, you know, dying kid thing. Sally Struthers on TV, again, showing horrible things. But it's not working after a while because we can measure it with our funding. So if you look at how our approach is now, it's very much people are happy and they're more than just sad. They have their own stories that we bring in. We bring in their names. You know, it's a very, very different approach that goes to show that that type of approach of just shocking and being, you know, in working in that way isn't necessarily effective. Now, when I went to Zatari, this is generally our approach where if you go on the UNICEF site, it's like mostly smiling children, you know? And to me, I just felt with our films, we had to somehow capture that nuance. And I think I'll get to that, why virtual reality tries to capture a little bit of both, where we do bring in and we show things that are difficult, but we show things like in real life. And that's what virtual reality captures, where it's not all great or all horrible, but it's somewhere, there's something in between that we have to do. So why else doesn't the approach of just showing horrible things work? Well, I don't know if you know, but we have a lustful relationship to violence. I know you think you probably don't think that's true for you, but it actually is for a lot of people. When you're on a highway and there's an accident, many people will slow down and watch it, but they won't necessarily do something because there's this curiosity. And I think that comes from, you know, this innate biological sort of reaction we have that just seeing horrible things isn't necessarily enough for us to stop, that there is in some ways this conflicted nature in us. And so much of art plays on that, like Clockwork Orange. You know, Jesus, even the original myth, I think, of Jesus suffering, there is something attractive that brings people, you know, really close to that type of stuff. Another reason why it can't work is that showing just horrible things that are sensational, it can be exploited by the enemy. What do I mean by that? If I show a black person being killed, a white person who's a racist can feel very happy about it and use it as propaganda, right? So similarly, you know, when there are offensives in Palestine, you know, there's some people view the suffering of others in very different ways and are watching it for very different purposes. The same sort of image that I showed before of Aylan, the boy washed up on the beach, was used by ISIS itself as propaganda to show this is what happens if you leave. They were not moved by that. They weren't saying, oh, Europe needs to open its borders and we need to help. It was, don't leave, this is what happens. So you don't know how something that's just showing horror is going to be used and be exploited in that way. So just as a kind of review, is, you know, sensational, shocking pictures. For me, I think the issue is that they kill storytelling. And really it is those elements of storytelling that really make it more powerful. I always say, with the Black Lives Matter, is it more important to see someone getting killed live, or what if we had footage live of them playing for the last time with their child before they're going to get killed, so you can kind of understand something that they don't, that there's an extra layer that you have to use your imagination. As a good example, the Showa documentary, which is a 9.5-hour incredible touchstone of documentary filmmaking, uses no archival footage about the Holocaust. It really shows you that you didn't need to see what you could only imagine, that if you can imagine it, that in some ways it has a deeper thing. Because at the heart of it, the sensational, shocking pictures and video, it paralyzes imagination, and without imagination, there's no empathy. Yes, I mentioned the empathy word, because we're gonna go there if I have enough time, but we'll do the best we can here. So some good examples that I think do things in a better way. Silvered Water uses YouTube footage from Syria, but in some ways builds a very interesting narrative and story around it that I think gives it a lot more power. A picture like this, from the Depression, goes way more than just showing starving skeletons, because in some ways you have to kind of go a little bit deeper and realize what it is you're seeing and why someone is looking this way. I'm working on a project on the Holocaust myself, and I was doing research, and I saw a picture like this from Auschwitz, and I just said, if you just look at it for itself, it just sees, okay, yeah, we know people are in camps and they do it. But the caption was, this is the exact last moment, right before people are marching into the gas chambers. So imagine, that they know, and you're watching this, and it sends a different sort of sensation out to you in that way. So that gives you a broader context of what UNVR is trying to do. I know it's a little bit philosophical, but I am in Europe. I'm allowed to now, talk about philosophy. Not in America, not at the UN, because this is what we're up against at the UN. When we want to get our sort of issue out, I'm going to just give you a quick sort of context about where that was the philosophy, and now it's the practical thing about being in the UN and our traditional ways of doing stories. When we really want to get people to care, there is like a traditional way that we usually think about things that we're trying to change, and slowly through virtual reality, technology, other ways we're trying to do it. We rely on celebrities, we write op-eds, we write reports, and we try to get you to care. But a lot of our sort of traditional ways of doing it, I don't know if you can see the numbers, but our numbers are not very high, because a lot of it isn't taking that same storytelling approach, which is to make it a little bit more complex, to make it a little bit more interesting. If you have the normal way of doing it, if you get Angelina Jolie, your numbers get a little bit higher, But this is what we're really up against, It's like burgers and cats, and things like that get the millions of views. So, when we went in, my sort of first sort of foray was, is that the world? Do people really not care? Is it just burgers and cats? Is there a way to do something with this type of storytelling that could get the same amount of engagement? So, just before, we did UNVR, just to build on it, we did a viral video campaign that I worked on, and I shot in the Amazon rainforest. And really, it was trying to take that same approach, the sort of first-person approach, a little bit deeper storytelling. And if you watch the films on the app, or if you're familiar with it, it's very similar. But this garnered, 1.3 million views in a week, and currently has 2 million hits, and was able to, be our first sort of way of showing that people do care. I co-produced Brandon Stanton's Humans of New York UN tour, which was using his same sort of way of working on the streets of New York with storytelling and trying to engage with it in many different countries. And we showed, again, an incredible amount of success and an engagement. So it shows that there is this other way. There is appetite for a lot of this stuff. Do I have like 5 minutes? Or 3 minutes? Okay. So, this comes to what we're doing with VR. And so in a lot of ways, I just want to, we'll just wrap it up. to me, there's something special about VR that allows this type of storytelling to even work better. And some have called it the empathy machine. I say some because it's a friend of mine. But really, I believe that, a lot of this, there is something happening in that way, but I think it's important to define what you mean by empathy. And so, I think this is just some of, we sat down and we just tried to think, what is our sort of definition of empathy and what are we trying to achieve when we do something in virtual reality? Really quickly, why do we do it? Because we get famous and we're at Sundance and I love it and I get to come here. It's awesome. The New Yorker writes about you and that's a real quote. I can't joke. I'm not even joking. But a lot of it is to have impact also. And we've been able to show an unprecedented amount of impact with fundraising. So we've taken, a 4-minute version of Clouds Over Sidra, and now, I'm pretty sure this is in the Netherlands too, but we've been doing it in 40 different countries in 15 different languages, where you have those people who stop you on the street to give money, and you all probably avoid them. But now a lot of them have VR headsets, right? So usually if someone stops you, it's 1 in 12 people who will give. But with virtual reality, it's 1 in 6. And so it's doubling donations for UNICEF and is our first sort of indicator of how we can use this for impact. The app that you all should download, because then my developers will be very happy because they'll see 500 downloads on one day from Amsterdam. It'll be fantastic. Has an action button on it too, so that we're going to continue to see that the tagline is from empathy to action. It's more than just giving money. Our film on Gaza debuted at Tel Aviv University and was shown on the streets of Tel Aviv to take people to Gaza, even though they're in Tel Aviv. And we're doing a documentary on that with BuzzFeed on reactions and trying to see how it can hopefully change people's minds. And it's been covered in Wired. You can check this out. So with that, I leave you. I'd like to leave just on a 1-minute video that just gives you a little bit of behind the scenes of what it's like to film in virtual reality in tough areas. And a lot of it is the co-creation with the community. Great, thank you.